Can you share the story of what inspired you to become a creator? Was it a moment? Was it a series of events? Like, what propelled you to start this journey?
I always wanted to work in entertainment. I knew that from a very young age. I really liked creating things, and I had tried really hard to apply to several different jobs. For a while, I didn't even know like a job being creative was a thing. Someone told me something about marketing, and I was like, oh, that sounds like really cool. I get to like take pictures and write things about it or make a video to like promote the company. I kept applying to several different jobs, even applied to work for BuzzFeed, which I ended up like doing a little bit of work for them, but they didn't full on hire me.
That's still sick though.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
I enjoyed it. It was fun. Little side note, they did have a position that was open, but then they were like, oh, it's $17 an hour. And then I messaged back and I was like, I think I'm like overqualified for this. And they were like, yeah, I think you are, but we'll let you know about the next one. I was like, okay, whatever. I ended up doing a lot of that stuff. I couldn't get hired by any company doing the work that I wanted to do. I worked for a camera company, which I won't name, and I wanted to work with their influencer department. They said that I didn't have much experience. So I built a YouTube channel. Within a year, I got it to like 50,000. And I was like, look, I can grow an account. I can help you. They were like that I was too young and that they wanted to go somewhere else. And they ended up picking someone else. I was like, well, I'm already growing this. Why don't I just see where it can go? So I quit and I kind of went full time. And I've enjoyed it.
That's really interesting. So it was almost like you used it as a way to build yourself in this industry, to understand media, to understand entertainment, to do content as a way to kind of say, hey, listen, here's the case study of me having already built this successfully. Now I obviously work at your company. Why don't you use the success that I've already gotten, leverage that as more of an in-house creator, in-house social media strategist? And it was just like at the point where you could have potentially gotten that, you were already succeeding enough. It was more worthwhile for you to just do it on your own than to go to the brand. Is that right?
I did initially, like my goal has always been to work for a company. That was what I wanted to do coming out of college. When I saw, after doing this, I was getting brand deals and I was getting all this stuff at the time, but I always just saw social media as like a side gig. It was like, if it makes money, great. If it doesn't, whatever. Yeah. So I was using it as a way to like kind of leverage my experience to grow in corporate America. When that didn't work out, I found out the only way I was ever going to work in entertainment or do any of this sort of stuff was if I did it myself.
That makes sense. I totally get it. How long ago was that you started this?
Like started that
your channel. Yeah.
Channel started in like 2013. I wasn't uploading consistently until about 2017, 2018.
Obviously, there's a big difference between where you were in 2013 to where you were in 2017 to where you are today. You know, I think what's really tough is like figuring out like what you know and what you don't know in the moment. Like obviously reflecting back now for where you were at literally day one versus, 4 years later in 2017. As you kind of think a little bit more towards not just the very beginning of your journey, but kind of like the second beginning of your journey in 2017, what were some of those first steps or initial challenges you faced to kind of establish yourself? And how do you think that some of the experiences that you had then at the beginning of creating content have kind of shaped your approach today?
Oh, that's a really great question.
I got good questions, man. I want to know like deep shit about your experience as a creator so I can share that with people and hopefully they gain the insights of like, Dave's been doing this for 10 plus years. Now I can build myself up in this industry without having to have 10 years of experience. But also, even if I have 5 years of experience, Dave has been doing this for twice as long. Like maybe I should just look at this, But yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Biggest like kind of turning point for me was, so for a while from like that 2013 to maybe around 2017, 18, not only was I not really uploading consistently, I don't think the content was very good as it typically is when you first start. But I think the reason why it wasn't good, or the reason why I wasn't getting better, was because I didn't show anyone the content. My friends didn't really even know I was doing it. My family didn't know. I was just doing it myself. And so people weren't seeing it and people weren't being like, so this part sucks, you need to fix it. So when around like 2017, I met a friend who was also doing YouTube, who was also small, who literally just came up to me, your content sucks. I'm like, I needed that. He wasn't even just like, your content sucks. He literally said, try this would be better. And that genuinely helped everything. That changed everything. The way I appeared on camera changed completely. it was almost overnight because I didn't have that critique before. So showing the content to people, creating videos that you know that other people would want to see, and just showing it to people you trust who can give you a genuine opinion, because most people can just be like, oh, it's fine, and then it's really not. Find someone who's blunt, who's honest, who's also doing it, maybe who wants the same thing, and just surround yourself with people like that. I think that was the biggest thing.
And that to be the case with honestly everything. That's why I'm so blunt with people. I feel like more people appreciate bluntness when it's not like, I'm just doing this to be a dick. I'm doing this to actually help you do better. It's like constructive criticism where it's like, I like what you're doing. You could do it differently. And I think you would get a lot more success doing X, Y, Z. So it's good that you had that transparency, because I feel like, especially like with talking with a lot of the creators, it's when they began, they didn't have friends that were creators. So nobody really understood this space or like give an opinion on something like this. Either it's good or it's bad. It's not, okay, this isn't great, but I think you could do X, Y, Z things and make it better. It's just like, I liked it or I didn't. And that doesn't really help you at all as a creator. And one of the things about this that's really interesting is, like, obviously we chatted a little bit about, real estate and how you're doing so much stuff outside of your content, and then you leverage your success from being a content creator to doing other things. I guess, how have you approached looking at monetization, right? Obviously brand partnerships is part of it. And could you share a little bit more about the strategy that you've tried to implement to continue to build how you're making money? All of my questions are two parts. Like, how has your approach evolved, like to stay authentic and to stay, effective for what you're trying to do?
What was tough for me was I think for a long time, even as I was full-time, I didn't have a specific brand. I felt like I was kind of all over the place. It just so happened that everything I was doing kind of made a little bit of money, so like I was able to survive. Goal has always been for me to just survive off of doing what I love, which is making videos and whatever. So in terms of how to monetize on YouTube or social media in general, it was talking to other influencers. It was seeing what they're doing. So whether that's they're doing courses, whether that's they're doing brand sponsorships or things like that. The first time I even found out that there exists of an agency that can help you look for brand deals, that was from another friend. And so when I found out that, there could be someone that looking for brand deals for me, I made sure I found resources that could help me get that agency or whatever. And then, so then it builds from there. And then it was, what can I do next? Then it was, maybe I can sell merch. Maybe I can sell some videos. Maybe I can sell my own products, Patreon, that sort of stuff. And then the driving force of all this has been anxiety. Just the truth is, it's just, I've been very anxious. I'm very aware that this could potentially not last for my entire life. And I don't believe that you can like disappear from relevance, if you will. Like, I don't believe that that's a thing, but I believe that people run out of ideas. I believe people get tired, and then that ends up making your content not as good. Thus, people are not watching as much. So I believe there's going to be one day where I'm just not able to create the same videos anymore. So anxiety has pushed me to look for monetization off the platform or stuff that doesn't require a lot of my own initial work. So whether it's passive income, like investing in the stock market, or the real estate, or I even thought of like doing vending machines. So just things like that. And then it's led me to not spend that much of my own money, being very conservative with my own spending and making sure that I track everything. And then whatever I have left over at the end of the year, I can invest it into something that I'm like real estate or whatever that I'm looking at.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I guess, going back to some of the brand partnership stuff, could you share a little bit more about the spectrum of brand partnerships, right? I feel like I hear so many horror stories. I feel like I hear so many like amazing brand partnerships that truly integrate into content that just feels seamless and natural and native to like who you are and what you're developing. What was a partnership that you felt like didn't really hit the mark? Maybe it was because the brand wasn't the right fit. Maybe it was because the agency wasn't necessarily doing the right thing. Maybe it was the lack of communication. What was a situation where you really just did not have a great partnership, whether it was on your end or on their end, and why? And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, what was a really great partnership? And what was a brand that, whether you've worked with them or whether you want to work with them, you would love to fully integrate into your content on a consistent basis?
There were a few that I felt like were really natural integrations. It's a good thing that like I talk about news. So I pretty much a lot of stuff, if it's related in pop culture or current events, it kind of fits into the content pretty well. There was a really bad sponsorship that I had I can't really say the name, but I feel like
That's okay.
yeah, I feel like if I talk about it, people are also going to know what it is anyway. So I'm just going to say there was this brand. They got into a big scandal because this one YouTuber said a bunch of things, kind of exposing them and talking about how they're fake or whatever.
Oh, wow.
They've also came out and said that none of that was true, but they kind of lost all their credibility. And then around that time, anyone who got a sponsor with them got a lot of backlash. The K-pop community can sometimes be a little isolated. So I was very lucky in the fact that none of them picked up on it. I didn't get any negative comments on it. They
Oh, nice.
never even heard of that brand before. But I felt really guilty because I was, oh, is this a brand that I should not have worked with? Was this a brand that my agency also got tricked into, right? Because I don't believe it was
Yeah.
fault. My agency was also going to sign me a deal where it was like a 5-figure deal with them, and it would have been amazing. But obviously, last minute, I was like, I don't think it's ethical to do this. And so that was my worst experience, but it wasn't bad, necessarily bad for me. The better experiences that I've had were brands like I've worked with like Raycon, which you can see on my channel a lot. They're just a good fit. Like I talk about K-pop and music, so it kind of works like that. It ended up not working out as well at the end. They ended up not. They signed me on for about 3 years. They kept renewing the contract, so every month. The 4th year, I feel like maybe also just like all my subscribers bought it already. And so they were like, they weren't getting as many sales. So they were just kind of like, oh, it's not really working anymore. And I'm like, okay. So I that was sad. I was a little sad because like I would sign those deals right at January. It would be a salary amount for people. So you sign this deal and then you're like for the year, regardless of whether my videos do well or not. So not getting that was a little sad, a little heartbreaking, but I understand from a business perspective. I understand.
You said it was Raycon?
Yeah.
So that's amazing, actually, because one of the things that I feel like I talk about a lot is building this long-term sustainable partnership with brands. Creators don't get this. Like so many creators aren't getting a contract at the beginning of the year saying, hey, you know, Dave, we want to work with you for the next 12 months. Give us 10 videos, give it to us at this cost. Like so much of what I'm talking about to creators right now is how do you find opportunities to find a brand like a Raycon that truly fits into what you're doing on a consistent basis, where you can very easily integrate them into your content, because so much of these one-off partnerships is very much, and I know we've talked about this before, is why am I seeing this random brand with this creator? It doesn't fit. It comes out of nowhere. But like, if all of a sudden you were working with, you know, I just have this product in front of me, like Vaseline, and like you're doing reporting, like you talk a lot in your content. Oh, you get chapped lips, like use Vaseline, right? It's not sponsored by Vaseline. If we do go on YouTube, it's not sponsored by Vaseline, but it's interesting because like a Vaseline could do a 12-month partnership with you. And if they pay you, let's say, I don't know what your normal rate is, I'm not going to ask, but let's say it's $15,000 a post, you know, if you can do 12 pieces of content and each one is $10,000 and you're making $120K a year versus $180K, you know, a year but you're going to have to continuously build like a contract with them every single month. I would think you'd probably want that. And most creators would want that like almost salaried level opportunity where it's a guaranteed income, where they're actually able to build in the relationship and the product so naturally that it, you know, it just doesn't feel out of place. And because it's consistently in your content, like you just feel like you're a part of the Vaseline ecosystem. And I think that's something that I feel like more and more brands are going to do. But it's awesome that you had that opportunity, because like that to me, like I don't hear that. Almost nobody is getting those opportunities. But like, so that was great. The Raycon stuff, the he who shall not be named brand that I don't. What is like the partnership that you would love to have?
Definitely more on the music side. I would love if like a brand like Spotify or Apple or something were to sponsor the channel. And this is obviously for my K-pop stuff. I would love to work with a tourism board. I would love to work with a news agency. These would definitely be more opportunities that I would love to have. I think those would be my number one picks.
Interesting. When you say news and tourism and video and like news companies, right? I would think maybe the goal, and maybe this is it or maybe it's not, is to go work for like an ABC or an NBC or CNN and be like an anchor and be like, hey, I'm the anchor for this daily news, daily trends for TikTok, Instagram, YouTube on my channel. Because I saw this creator who built a YouTube channel specifically for sports, and ESPN bought it. Like ESPN bought him out. Like he's a component of their ecosystem now. Like I know a lot of these traditional news outlets aren't necessarily looking at social media first, because they're still very much in like the Stone Age with this stuff. Like I have a friend who works at, or some girl that I know who works at ADC, and she pitched this really cool idea over there, and they were like all gung ho about it. They're like ready to create content, and they wanted to do this. And then as I started like thinking through the process a little bit more, they're like, oh, actually, we can't do this. Oh, we have too much red tape. Oh, we can't do it. Like, would you see an opportunity for yourself to basically maybe not sell the channel, but to license the channel, where it's like, hey, I'm almost like, you know, how Overtime does it and Barstool does it, where it's like, like Overtime Meg. She's a part of the Overtime ecosystem, but she owns the channel, I believe. Could you see, you know, Dave Desai, CNN, or CNN Dave Desai as, you know, a new channel under them, where you're working hand in hand with the CNN network to build out content continuously and kind of showcase their brand and be built into their ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, that is like the ultimate dream, I think, for me. I would love to work with these big news agencies. I've reached out to some of them to even pitch an idea similar to that.
Yeah.
They haven't responded. So yeah, I mean, I would love to do something like that. I think that would incorporate a lot of the stuff that I want, which is like, I've always liked to work in a corporate environment. I know that's like controversial, but I've enjoyed it. Even the way I run my channel, you'd be pretty surprised it's done in a very corporate way. I do not mind doing that at all. That would provide a lot more stability for me. I think I'd be able to reach more people, and I don't think that it would be inauthentic to me. If I was my channel and a lot of the stuff that I've talked about, I tend to also give the other side of a company. So I'll say, like, if everyone's upset at this company, I would tend to say, this could be what's going on behind the scenes, the politics and everything. This is like what we don't know. So like, just consider that if you're going to be upset. So
you try to give the contrarian point of view. Yeah.
I've never been, and I've never been anti that. And I've always, so I don't feel like it would be inauthentic. Whereas like, I feel like some people who come on and they're like, I'm very anti against corporate America, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Come on, and it would be really inauthentic if they were to license their content.
How do you stay sticky, and how do you build that loyal community of people?
I think with my K-pop channel, it was easy because everyone, I think, automatically already has this built-in sense of community, because it's such a niche genre. And then when they see someone that likes it also, they're like, oh my God, we're like a family. We both love the same thing. When it's a little bit more broad news, like my TikTok or whatever, it is a little more difficult, because I think also with like short form, I think it's a little bit more difficult to cultivate a community. But I think really the key is uploading consistently and uploading frequently. Because if you start to pop up on their feed more and they start to see your face more, whether they like it or not, your face is now part of their life because they see you so often.
Yeah.
So you're now integrated, and like, you don't know when they're watching you. They could be watching you right before surgery, and then now you're part of that experience for them. They could be watching you right when their parents are having an argument and they're locking themselves in their room. Like, you don't know what their situation is, and you're being introduced to them in like a potentially a vulnerable spot. Not that you're trying to do that, but that tend to be what it is. And so you would then end up getting integrated into their life, whether they like you or not. So that tends to be very sticky, I would imagine.
I've definitely had creators that I've seen. Like, there was this one guy, it was so weird. Like, he was a UGC creator. I don't even remember his name, but like, for some reason over the course of like 2 months, I saw this guy every single day, but it was from like different accounts. He had his own personal channel as a UGC creator. He had like a different AI channel. He was on an AI brand channel, and he was on a different brand channel doing UGC content. I'm like, how have I seen this guy 10 different times in one day? And like, you know, when you have that familiarity with somebody, you're just so much more likely to engage and to watch and to follow. And I noticed that, you know, when I see somebody new for the first time, like, even when I go out, like if I go out and I'm like hanging out with a friend and they introduce me to a friend of theirs, like, I'll give them the time of day. I'll be nice. Like, but if I meet somebody really random who I've never met before, they could be the nicest person in the world. And I'm like, who the hell is this person? Like, why do I care? You know? So it's very much like that too. And I think that's really interesting. I feel like a lot of brands just aren't showing up enough. They're being it's hard as a brand, especially because like, you could take the risk and be like, have like one person or one creator be like the key focus of your content. So like, let's say Jake from State Farm, right? Like, he's everywhere. Everybody knows Jake from State Farm. Everybody loves Jake from State Farm. But if all of a sudden Jake from State Farm has like a DUI, that brand like has a huge loss, right? I mean, I doubt that's going to happen anytime soon, but you place so much emphasis on this one person, on this one character creator, then it becomes almost detrimental to a certain point. And I've noticed that with a lot of really big brands, they don't want to do that. The problem is when you spread that love around of like, you know, if you have 20 or 30 creators doing UGC content for you, then it becomes a little bit harder to make something that's consistent. The only the only consistency then is like your brand. You know, it's not your face, it's like your logo or your brand itself or the product. So I think it's really challenging to figure out what that structure looks like, especially if you don't already have like a character that's built outside of social media and integrated onto social, outside of just like maybe your internal team. You know? I think what's super interesting about your content is that like it very much is kind of what's happening now. You know, I think a lot of brands, when they focus on relevancy and relatability, they look at memes and songs and trends and like what does that do? I mean, personally, like when I see a brand using a meme, I think, what's the legality of that? Like, why is Chris Hemsworth as Thor in your video? Is Marvel going to sue you? Is Disney going to sue you? Is Chris Hemsworth going to sue you? What is the value add to your brand by having a meme in it, right? But I think when you look at what, you know, trending, like that's what people think. They think what's the CapCut template? What's the trending sound? What's the trending moment? But what you're doing is it's focusing less on trends and more on relevancy. Like what is going on in the macro environment of the world? How are you coming up with your content creation process from like figuring out the idea to building out like just like the publication of it to like putting it out on platforms and distributing? Like, what does that look like for you?
Everyone's process is really different. For me, trends have never really worked. I think occasionally I'll post something that is a trend and it'll really take off. But I've tried posting like on TikTok and even YouTube where I'll post about like whichever celebrity is trending at the time. And because there's so many other people talking about that, my content gets like buried, right? So it doesn't always work. What I do is I spend a lot of time in the research stage. So the research stage is longer than the editing, obviously longer than the filming, longer than all of those things. And I'll just kind of constantly search up topics. So I'll follow a bunch of news creators. I will go through their content, see what's doing well for them and what the topic is that's doing well for them. And I'll do a little search and I'll see how many other people are talking about this, how well it's doing for them.
Yeah.
And from there, I'll decide if I want to talk about this. It's really helpful because the content is, I mean, a lot of times I'll look for content that is a topic that is trending now, but was also trending like a year or 2 years ago. And then what ends up happening is I'll post the content, it does well or it does okay, whatever. A few months go by and then I'll go back to that video and it's at like 5 million views, and it's because it's blowing up again and it keeps doing that.
I see.
I tend to try to find content. I'll do content that is relevant now, where if it's like an earthquake that happened or something, but I'll also cover, there's a lot of what I call like dead zones or dead periods where nothing's happening. Bad is happening, which is good. But then I have to look for something that is more evergreen. So whether that's like a disease that has always been around that people didn't really know, but maybe they're interested in, or something like that, where that's not really something that is time sensitive, right? Like it can go viral at any point. That's essentially how I kind of frame everything.
I feel like the evergreen content is really interesting because like that's kind of like a lot of what I do when I'm looking at the Excel stuff. It's like there is no real trending kind of thought process. It's just kind of an always thing. So it makes sense why you'd see success with content months later, where it's just like what is going on in the world. If it's like a topic that is consistently happening too throughout time, like, you know, and I know you're not doing this specifically, but like Halloween, Christmas, holidays, 4th of July, family, like those are kinds of topics that are always going to be around, even if they're around during certain times. But like the evergreen content style is really interesting because I feel like a lot of brands aren't really looking at that, and a lot of creators aren't either. But I like that you mentioned that you do so much research, because I think that's the biggest differentiator between a lot of the smaller creators and a lot of the bigger creators that I see, especially when you understand in your niche what's performing well and what's not, because so many creators just kind of like throw content at the wall and see what sticks. But like people are already creating so much content already, like there is clear indication of like what performs well and what doesn't perform well. But so many people don't do the research, and brands do not do the research. They just kind of like put a video out there. I don't know if you saw the newsletter thing that I did for Skittles. there was like one video, like, do you know like the videos where they do like the letter where it's like, if this person's name starts with an A or with a J, this person owes you a, or like they did one video for that for Skittles, and it said, you know, if your name starts with an A, you owe your best friend a Skittles pack or something. And I'm like, great, why didn't you do that 26 times?
Yeah.
Like, why are you not putting out this content every single day? So it's crazy to me that there's just not a lot of strategy and thought behind that. But I love that that's kind of how you focus and what you're differentiating on. Based on your journey, you know, and I know we talked about it earlier, what advice would you give to aspiring creators, or even a creator with like 100,000 followers that's trying to move to the 500,000 level or to the million level or to diversify their platforms? Like, day one, what advice are you giving? And then let's say you've reached 100,000 followers, what advice are you giving?
So if you're just starting and this is what you want to do, well, first really think about if this is what you want to do, because there's a lot of ups and downs to it, but it is a fun job. Throw spaghetti at a wall. I think that is probably the best strategy when you're first starting. What is the type of content that you want to make? What is the type of content that you watch, and then watch a lot of it, and break down what is working for other people. So if you want to do, hopefully don't pick a content or a topic that's too saturated, but if you wanted to do fashion, you would go to like your favorite fashion creators and just see like which video has done really well for them, and kind of like look at it and kind of break down why. Is it because the intro really grabs you, or is it because that specific brand is trending right now? Maybe talk about it. Do a bunch of videos, try it in different formats, and just upload as much as you can. Then when one actually works and you're noticing that you get like, it doesn't even have to get like 1 million views. If all your videos are getting 20 views, but this one video gets 300 views, then maybe go for 300 and keep seeing where it can go. And then occasionally switch it up and throw spaghetti at a wall and try something different as well. If you're at 100,000 followers and you already know what your genre is, you already know what your niche is. Going through the data and kind of sharpening everything up, I think would be the best tool. Would be so seeing where people are clicking off, whether that's like, if that's right at the beginning, then the hook, you know, needs work. If it's in the middle at one point because the outro is too long, then cut the outro. If you know you're starting to notice people, you know, there is like this image I think you can find online for YouTube where it'll show you like attention graph and what it means. So just also like if you're noticing people are clicking off at the end after like 40 seconds, and then the video is a minute long, so then 20 seconds, the ending part, no one's watching it, then cut it out and then re-upload the video and see how that does.
Interesting.
So just like tightening everything up.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Day one, just do anything. Get it going, get an idea, put out content. Day 100, or like, you know, once you hit 100,000 followers, then it's about refinement. Then it's about in-depth data, research, discovery, optimization, and finding ways to really build out your specific narrative based off of the success that you've already had, what's already working on other channels. Totally makes sense. Clearly, you found that with yourself, you found that with your content, and you've done it twice. So, you know, it's really crazy because I feel like I see a lot of news creators. There's a lot of K-pop too. You know, I guess, what do you think has been your unique value proposition? Like, what are the unique qualities or experiences that you think have set your content apart from other creators in your niche? And what do you think makes you and your brand maybe like the most attractive or an attractive partner to brands for more of those authentic collaborations?
How I tell news differently, and you know, some people like it and some people don't. I try to do it in an entertaining way. I think that is something that brands are going to like, because if I can showcase their brand in an entertaining way that is easy for people to consume, people are going to watch it, and a lot of people will buy from it because they're like, oh, this is a great ad. And I've seen that before. So and I've done ads where I'll promote a TV show, and like the TV show is based off of real events. There was this movie called Girl in the Basement, and it was about this real case that actually happened. So I'm like talking about it, and then I'm like, by the way, this is a real movie, go watch it. So like I feel like that's just a perfect integration to like what I normally talk about, and also a perfect integration to get people to watch the TV show or movie.
Totally. I wish you did a baby reindeer campaign, dude. That was a great. Did you watch that show? It was awesome.
I haven't seen much of it, no, but I heard of it.
That's like, I know that you don't do the trending stuff, but like if you look at the analytics for like a Netflix or Hulu and see what shows like Netflix originals or shows that are popping up that are super successful based on true stories, based on true crime. Like, I know that there's definitely some saturation in that space, but I feel like that could be really interesting too with some of the content that you're doing, because then you can go to like, if you're not already doing a lot of that content organically, then you can go back to Netflix or Hulu and those brands and be like, hey, I'm already promoting your stuff. Like, you're already getting great views for me. Bring me to the premiere. Bring me to do this. Like, and then it gives them good organic exposure. But especially if you have like a video that, let's say, gets like 100,000 views or even 1 million views or something, whatever it is, if you go to the brand and you're like, hey, I just did this amazing video about your show, about your product. Do you want to promote it? Like, do you want to like pay me 5-10 grand and promote this? Like, I already did the work. It's already successful. And then it's just such an easy way for them to just put money towards your content, you know?
I just wrote that down because like, I think that's a great idea. So I will look into that.
I mean, you know, I got some good ideas. I'm okay. We'll do all right. So I guess the last question for me is more like long-term, right? You know, with your content creation, with yourself, like whether it's content creation and being a creator or being in the news or even just yourself as a person, like what are your long-term goals? Like, how do you envision your growth in this space impacting your content, your audience, potential brand collaborations? Like, here you are today, you know, 10 years plus later from when you first started. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Like, I mean, you know, am I going to see Dave Desai and lights on CNN? Like, where, you know, what's the goal? Like, where are you trying to be at?
I really like storytelling. And I think in any medium that I can do that in, I will be really excited to do that. I studied acting for a little while. So if I can end up being in a film, that would be great. If I end up making a lot of videos, that is also great. Very exciting to me. I enjoy every aspect of storytelling. I think that that's what's going to drive me to continue doing this.
Have you ever thought about writing a book?
Yeah. Before I was a teenager, I wrote a book, and it was actually 120 pages long. It was like this fictional story. Have you seen The Last of Us?
Yeah.
It's very similar to that story, the one that I wrote. Like the title is called The Last 7, and it's very similar to that story. And I was very shocked at how close it was.
Interesting. Have you ever thought about maybe making like a K-pop show or like a K-pop like book? Have you seen Swarm?
No.
So Swarm is kind of like an offshoot of like a Beyonce show. Okay. So like, you know how Beyonce's like fan base is called the Beehive?
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yes.
So Swarm is almost like this girl is like a stalker for like she absolutely loves like this Beyonce-esque character, obsessed with her, like goes absolutely nuts. If anybody doesn't like Beyonce for this character, she murders them. Like it's crazy. Have you thought about maybe, especially just given the fact that your content is already so aligned with K-pop, have you thought about maybe doing like almost like a dark K-pop show or like book, like and literally I'm literally looking at K-pop terminology to like kind of see what the name of the book would be or something. But have you thought about doing something like that where, you know, you're taking your content that you're already doing that's already successful, you already have the audience for it, and then developing a even like if it's 100 or 200 page book or series, like getting them to invest in it because they already have that self-interest in what you're doing and it's already so applicable to what it is, to what your content is.
That's a really good idea. Definitely worth exploring for sure. I would love to do a book about that. And then potentially make it into a show or a movie. That would be great.
That's the goal, man. I think so many of these things are just like take an idea, make it into a book, is somewhat successful, and then turn it into a TV show. Thank you so much for being here, Dave. I really appreciate it. You know, I'm really glad we had the chance to chat.